I mean, there's a technical side of things to keep the wine healthy and from the chemical perspective. But at the same time, there's so much we don't know. So there's, every wine is different and unique. You can't have like a chemical fingerprint of each wine you make. So.
Hello, Stephanie.
Hi, Petra.
How are you?
Well, and you. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, lovely to meet you too. So you're a winemaker, and your wine is called Thistle and Wiid.
Yes.
Yeah. And just tell me about your career as a winemaker. How did you start? What was the interest in wine when you were younger?
So actually, my sisters thought it would be a great idea for me to study winemaking. They were keen to have a supply of free wine in the family, is what they thought. But I wanted to study something in science. So it was a Bachelor of Science degree, which was something which was quite applied. But it's coming from Johannesburg, which is very far away from the winelands, about 1,000 kilometers away. Might sound like an unusual choice, but my grandfather actually was a winemaker. So he had a wine farm. Yeah, and my mother grew up on a wine farm here in Stellenbosch. So none of the rest of the family is not in the wine business, and I'm the youngest granddaughter. And now I've gone full circle back into wine.
Wow, so, isn't that amazing? And you lived in Johannesburg, so I mean, it's not as if you grew up on a wine farm that you had that.
No, but definitely grew up with wine culture.
Okay.
So my opa, Neil Hubbard, was the owner of Speed. So there was always wine around.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And but you said that you were interested in science, and this is what also was sort of an incentive to study winemaking. But I've read recently that wine is as much a science as it is an art. Do you agree with that?
Oh, yes. Yeah. No, definitely. Okay. I mean, there's a technical side of things to keep the wine healthy and from the chemical perspective. But at the same time, there's so much we don't know. So there's, every wine is different and unique. You can't have like a chemical fingerprint of each wine you make. So, there's so much we don't know, and we don't know about how things in the vineyards affect the wines, in the bottle. So I think all of that stuff that we don't know, we rely on, on intuition, and that's where the art comes in.
Okay. And do you think so? For example, your wines is distinct to you. So, for example, if is there a recipe and then somebody else can come and copy that, but it will still taste different, or still taste the same?
So yeah, I don't think so. I think the thing is, I'm actually quite like an artist in the way that I'm not very consistent with doing stuff in like an orderly way.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that's actually quite a benefit for me. My wines are not recipe driven. Yeah. So each vintage you might do something different. Every step of the process is kind of considered, and then we decide what we want to do, when we want to bottle, how many months it's going to spend in the barrels, or even which barrels we're going to select. It's not there's, I suppose, a baseline recipe, yeah. But when it comes to the details, that's like specific for every action. So yeah, someone else could could work with these vineyards, and we do find that. So a lot of the vineyards. So in my business, I don't own any grapes. Only own any vineyards, and I don't own a winery. So I purchase fruit from different growers and make the wine in rented cellar space. So a lot of the vineyards I would actually share with other amazing winemakers. And sometimes we even harvest on the same day, but our wines are completely different.
Isn't that amazing?
So, yeah. So I think, no, there's definitely something there.
So you're saying that now, do you go out or how do you choose then the vineyards that you get your grapes from?
So, I used to when I started, I was working at Fairview Winery, which is a very big and commercial setup. And I started making my own wines, just a little bit of Chenin. So I can actually show you this is the wine.
Oh, yeah. Oh, but that's a beautiful label that you have there. Yeah. So that's a Chenin.
Yeah, so that's the first wine I started making is Chenin Blanc, and that's really where my passion is, and I think my expertise in white wine making, and also Chenin Blanc being, a flagship wine or variety for South Africa. So we only look for quality vineyards. I'm playing in the premium wine sector. So I mean, there are many vineyards. You can get grapes from anywhere, but we work with the growers and really make sure we get good quality premium grapes. And then for us, it's really important the site that the vineyard is growing on. So winemakers speak about terroir, which is everything: the soil, the vineyard, how it's grown. Is it trellised? Is it a bush vine? The climate, the slope, the row direction, all of those type of things. So that's the kind of identity and the story that I want to try tell in each wine. So each wine needs to have its own sense of place.
That's amazing. That's so interesting. I didn't realize. I mean, you don't realize it maybe if you're a wine connoisseur, but otherwise you don't realize it when you drink the wine. That's all have to be in place for you. But now, do you just buy your wines from a specific district, or would this also influence the wine if you suddenly now buy from a different district?
Oh, definitely. So my main portfolio is Chenin Blanc. So I make 3 Chenin Blancs, and I make them basically the same way: whole bunch, press, and natural ferment in barrels. And I bottle them at the same time. But one is from Paarl, one is from the Swartland, and one is from Stellenbosch, and 3 different wines. So that sense of place is so important. And I think that's where the art comes in, to be able to stand in a vineyard and kind of think, where can these grapes take us, and try capture that. So and to make the best possible wine from a site.
So do you actually taste the grape, and that grape tells you something about what the wine can be?
To a certain extent, but I think it's more of the site. So the soil, the vineyard, the grapes as well, but by the time you get to tasting the grapes, when they're ready for picking, you've made the decision to take this vineyard.
Yeah.
So you have to make that decision based on all the other aspects, and you'll taste grapes to make the decision on when to pick when to harvest. You know, are we going to harvest tomorrow or next week, or wait a little bit, or yeah.
But now if you say Paul and Stellenbosch and Swartland, these are quite, they're not so far away from each other. How much does the soil differ? Or do you go on acidity in the soil, or what is it about the soil that you particularly choose those vineyards?
So South Africa is really very interesting. We've got a very heterogeneous soil. So within one vineyard, you could have 2 or 3 soil types. So it's really very fragmented. We've got very old soils. And for example, the Swartland vineyard is all very granitic, very leached soil, so not a lot of nutrients, very sandy. And that gives you a very kind of electric wine with a lot of length and tension, compared to the Stellenbosch soils, which is sandstone, decomposed sandstone. And, that's got a better water holding capacity. So those grapes and better nutrient content. So those grapes have a different ripening pattern and can hang a little bit longer in that area. And we get a bit more structure in the wines. So I think this is also what is interesting about wine is, we know things about the vineyard or the soil, for example, but nothing is directly related. So that's why, if you have you mentioned acidity, a very acidic soil, there are things you can do, but there are so many factors that play in the vineyard, as well as, and then you've got the winemaking process with a whole bunch of factors, and then putting the wine in the bottle. So I think, I realize the more you learn, the more you realize the less we know.
Oh, really? So is this then, because they wine is in specific years, and that, it's sometimes they say, oh, this year was a good wine. And what is that? What has to be in place for you to say this was a good year for this specific wine?
So that's the vintage is another complicating factor. So no 2 vintages are the same. In South Africa, we'll have different years will be good in different areas. So depending on the rainfall, the climate, I suppose the big things we're looking out for is wind during October and November, when the berries are setting. So that's going to determine your yield for the harvest. So if there's a lot of wind, then you won't get good set and you won't have a good yield. Then we also look at the rain. So
but wait, you have to stop now. When it's still the berries and it's a lot of wind, what does the wind then do?
So the wind affects the flowers, blows the flowers off, and affects the ability for set, which is when it just becomes the tiny little green things.
Yeah, of course.
So, and if you have a lot of wind, then you get these bunches with very loose grapes because the things have been blown off in between.
Oh, I see. So, okay. Yeah. That makes total sense. So you look at the weather report quite differently than the rest of us look at the weather report.
Yes, definitely. So and then we're looking at the rain in November, and then in South Africa we're also looking at heat waves. So January and February can also determine, and then also rain in the growing season. You can get some rot. So there are a lot of factors. The heat,
and in January, February, those areas are known for really getting hot. What does the heat do to the grapes then?
So above 30 degrees, or I think 27, I can't actually remember, the vines stop photosynthesizing. So they basically shut down, and they're not able to ripen those grapes. So they are just in survival mode. Yeah. So it's all about the plant and photosynthesis and how much water it can take up, and yeah. So
you
this
are
is where the science comes in again.
Yeah. But you are very dependent on the farmer who owns this vineyard then, on how they treat the grapes.
Yes, but we work with them. So especially I'm buying relatively small quantities of grapes, so I'll pay a premium for it. But I need the farmer to treat it like premium grapes in the vineyard. So if there are too many grapes on the vine to ripen it all to the level that we want it to get to, we'll in January go and drop bunches. So that would mean less grapes and a lower yield for the farmer, but it's going to give me a better quality wine. So we work together.
And the age of a vineyard, does this also have a role?
Oh yeah.
Really?
So we talk about young vineyards, and that would be, so they vineyards start producing grapes from 3 years. So from about 3 to 7, 8 years old, consider them young vines, and those are not going into quality premium products. So I don't really make wine from any. I think the youngest vineyard I work with is like 20 years old. And then I've got one very special vineyard that I work with, which is for this Divilkey Chenin Blanc. And I've got it on the back here of the label. I don't know if you can see that. It's a certified heritage vineyard, planted in 1961. Yeah. So we've got the Old Vine Project, and any vineyards over 35 years you can certify as an old vine. And this is our way of trying to protect these vineyards, because it's part of our heritage and we need to keep them in the ground. And as the vineyards get older, they produce less grapes, but the quality is really good. So the farmers are maybe getting lower yields and want to pull those vineyards out and replace them, but actually they're producing amazing fruit. So it's that balance between keeping it commercially viable, and that's kind of how this Old Vine Project came about, to try and keep these vineyards in the ground.
That is very interesting. So I can understand from a farmer's point of view, it's not profitable for them to keep these old vineyards. But what would be the oldest vineyard that you can buy from, or that you still can get grapes from for the wine?
I think there's one. I think the oldest vineyard is like 90 something years old. It's a Sauvignon Blanc block. I think there's like a 95-year-old vineyard, but you can't just get the grapes. Those are going to winemakers with a very long time, and they'll have long-standing relationships with their growers. So
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So you can't just pick and choose.
Oh, okay. So you also have to build up sort of a reputation with your wine to get those types of grapes.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
But now, first, I want to ask your name, Thistle and Wiid. Where did you get that name? What was the idea behind the name?
So the first vineyard that we were exploring, we were actually doing it on a Saturday afternoon, because this all started as a side project. back in 2016, well, 2015. And now it's my full-time job. We went to visit this vineyard and we were wearing slip-slops and shorts. It's the middle of summer. We were going to go to the beach afterwards. It was Saturday afternoon, and the vineyard is covered in these devil's thorns. So we couldn't actually walk into it. We had to come back another day with better shoes. And every time we went back to this vineyard, we would get these thorns stuck in our feet. And this is where the idea of the weeds in the vineyards and that they're part of the story we're trying to tell. So that's where thistle and weed came from. My business partner Etienne is to Blanche, so he's the thistle, and I'm the weed. My surname is Heath. So that's where it came from, and all of our wines are named after weeds that you find in the vineyards. So we've got Divilkie, Kakibos, Brandnetel, Knapse Karel, Nastigel.
Oh, that is so brilliant. Oh, that's beautiful. I love it. Taking a weed and making it so special, to attach it to
and
the
making
wine.
it beautiful. I think that's also something which is, you pull out and throw away. And like if you look at, here's another one of my labels. If you look at the labels, really like celebrated it.
It's wonderful. I think this is a wonderful idea. And the names are so typical South African as well.
Yes, yeah. So we've used the colloquial Afrikaans names for the weeds. So that's typically what the people working in the vineyards would call the weeds.
Yeah. And now, but tell me now, this is the business side of winemaking. So and this is the same as I speak to many artists as well, and they, we talk about this idea of you're doing your art and it's so wonderful, but there's also a business side to it. Is that also something you had to consider when you started winemaking, or realize that there's a lot of have to do with marketing and getting your product out there? Was that also part of what you wanted to do?
I think I had to become, when I started this, I had to really become someone a little bit different, I suppose. I had to start selling myself, which was quite weird. And my ideas, which I'd never had to do before, working for someone else, for another company, you're selling someone else's story. So that was quite weird from the business perspective, but the marketing I really love, and the design aspects. There's so much you can do which is creative within the business, which I love. What I don't love is the accounting. But luckily, most of the things that I don't love, I can get someone to help me with. So I just do the things I'm good at, which is the winemaking and the marketing side of things, which I enjoy.
Well, you've got such a great story, and I mean I think that already must be easier to tell the story and to work from there and to get the marketing from there.
Yes, yeah. And I think with wine, it's like any type of art. I mean, you're a photographer, you get different types of photography. You get photography which is for consumption and for photo albums, and you get fine art photography. So I think in wine we've got the same thing. We've got, say, what people call lifestyle wine or everyday drinking wine, which is for consumption. And then the part of the game where I'm playing is really premium wines, and that's where the art is.
I just forgot to ask you something else when you mentioned also fermenting. and you said the fermenting process. How much is your fermenting natural, or how much do you have to intervene there?
So I think this is also something which has changed in my journey as a winemaker, from kind of wanting to control things to really just kind of guiding the ferments through. So I try, if I don't need to add anything, I do mostly natural fermentations. And yeah, just kind of, I try not to stress too much about the wines anymore and let them do their thing. Whereas, and it's quite difficult to hold back and not, I suppose it's like a painting. It's difficult to know when to stop and not overwork it. So yeah, it's much easier to kind of make the wine and add things and do this and whatever and push it in a direction that you want it to go in. It's much more difficult to step back and see where it's going and kind of go there a little bit slower. So that's kind of my philosophy.
Well, I'm very interested in fermented foods and fermenting, and this is why I'm asking this. That I always I wonder how much intervention is there in, say, for instance, winemaking and even beer making. You know, that alters the taste also.
Well, I think if you're working on a commercial scale, then you need to add your yeast so that you can secure the ferment so that it ferments and finishes and goes dry. If you're making 1 million liters, you can't have sweet off dry wine. If you're supposed to be making dry wine. But luckily, my batch sizes are so small, I can really monitor every barrel and only intervene if it's not going to finish fermenting. So that helps.
Yeah, this is so interesting. Tell me, where is your wines available? Do you ship internationally?
I do. So I've got distribution in Germany, Switzerland, Sweden, Belgium, Netherlands, UK. So that's basically covers your part of the world. And then the US and China and Taiwan as well.
Okay.
And Hong Kong. Yeah.
That's amazing. And okay, so it's available basically everywhere.
Yes, available everywhere, but the quantities are so small that mostly it gets sold on allocation. But yeah, we get a little bit everywhere.
Yeah, well, that's so great. And I mean, congratulations on what you are doing, because I think it's you're so young and you've done so much already, and it's really I'm really very impressed with what you just told me and what you've done.
Thank you, Petra.
But tell me now, I want to ask you, what is your wish for the future?
World peace, I think, is an appropriate thing to say right now.
Yeah.
My husband, he works in South Africa, but they've got business partners in Ukraine. And I'm just so sad about what's going on in the world at the moment. Like, I think I've got goosebumps now. It's really, I mean, South Africa, we are so far and not involved in this at all. But I think the human aspect of what is going on is really, I've been so sad and depressed this week. So,
no,
that's my immediate wish. Coming from a dark place, but normally I would be much more positive. I'm actually a very positive person.
No, but it's true, and we are so aware of it now. That what can happen if one person, dictator, does make such foolish decisions.
Yeah. So I think that is my wish. It's very difficult for me to think about normal things. My son's first birthday party is this weekend, and yet my husband has colleagues from Ukraine here, and I just, how can we go on with our lives?
Yeah,
It's horrific. So
that's true. Yeah,
but at least I have wine.
Yeah,
to get through.
yeah. And but for your wines, what is your wish? What would you like your business to look like in the future?
I would love to grow my business. At the moment, I've grown the last 5 years. I've really grown a lot and kind of stabilized. But I would love to make more premium South African wine, because I think it's good for South African wine. And I think that's one of the problems is, there's a lot of high-end producers, but we don't have the volumes to make an impact internationally.
Oh, I see.
And in order to promote South Africa and South African wine as a whole, it would be really nice to be in a position where I could just make so much more of the wine, because we need to tell the world that we make amazing wines in South Africa.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, definitely. And I do think, I'm very pro South African wine. I'm not a very knowledgeable, but I have the wines that I like to drink, and I'm always very loyal to drinking South African wine. I think it's just I don't know if it's psychological, that it's South African wine, or if it's the taste or what it is, but yeah. But now, what I also like to ask people, is there a restaurant or something like a coffee shop that you visit regularly in your area that you want to do a shout out to?
So Skoon is an amazing coffee shop, and they're also into fermentation, more in the sourdough side of things. So started out as a bakery, and they've actually they've grown and have got a whole lot of little beautiful coffee shops popping up all over the Cape. So Skoon, great place to go work from as well.
Oh, really? Okay, so I'll put their link also in the description, and I'll put the link to your website. Is that the best place to contact you?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's wonderful. Stephanie, thank you so much for your time and for sharing all this with me. And I wish you really all the best with your wine, and that your wish comes true.
Thank you, Pietra.
Yeah. Have a lovely day.
You too. Keep well. Bye. Thanks for the chat.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.